JIMI WANJIGI is our guest today, this morning. Good morning, JIMI.
Good morning, Eric.
Karibu sana.
How are you all?
Good morning.
Very well, thanks.
We're well. Are you well?
Yes, very well. Very well. Glad to be back here.
Hey, today you're wearing a jacket. You know, every time you come in a half coat.
In fact,
warm...
I think, that's true. I have a court session after this. I'm told the DPP wants to withdraw the charges that they had on me some time ago.
What charges were this?
Something about some land near my...
the Westlands land issue.
You remember the infamous raid, the
siege.
siege? And, the truth has come out because they've said that there's no case. In fact, we are the complainants of some thieves. So they've realized those are real thieves and they are arresting them. So they just want to withdraw charges. So I'm going to court after this.
I see.
I guess, as we said at the time, it was a persecution.
Coming around full circle.
Full circle.
All right.
Full circle.
Karibu sana, JIMI.
Asante sana.
Last time you were here, we were talking about public debt.
Yes.
And, the state of public debt and the issues that you had discovered in your audit of our debt book.
Yes.
And what you had seen. And then you painted a picture of what is likely to happen.
Yes.
If things don't change in the next couple of months. And many people are, reacted to that. And they were like, what on earth is this man saying? This is another doomsday. Surely.
Yes.
We have had people who are talking about doomsday on one side. And here's JIMI again also talking doomsday on the other. So we said, please come back, JIMI.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the future. So what are our options out of this?
Yes.
But let's not get there first.
Yes.
City has the day's proverb.
Good.
From the country of Eritrea. Now, people know Eritrea as this country which is literally next to the Red Sea, literally, with one of the oldest ports on this particular continent. And that rich history is lost because depending on when someone was born or when they started interacting with the history, their association with Eritrea is with Ethiopia. Started long before, long, the days of the pharaohs. The archaeologists and historians, when they look at just history and evidence, you'd be amazed at the sort of evidence they look at. There's this land that is even referred to as the land of Punt. Mm-hmm. Geographically, when they do whatever magic it is to take this and put it here and place the other here and then configure, Punt appears to be Eritrea.
Really?
Well, yes. And there's evidence to support it.
Allah?
Yes.
Every time I read that and I hear Puntland now in Somalia, so I actually assume.
Yes.
Very much the same here.
The historical Punt. These are people who are related to the Egyptian pharaohs. Yes. So their history is actually quite rich.
Okay.
But the details of more of this richness tomorrow. Now, JIMI, you may not be here, but anyway, it'll be there. You'll be listening.
I'll be listening.
All right. Now the proverb.
That's a lovely lesson.
If a lion shows you its teeth, it doesn't mean it likes you.
Are you saying that he's not smiling?
When a human being interprets the lion's actions,
JIMI, tell these men they ought to listen to
me. You see, when we are now laughing, and when we laugh, we bare our teeth. So we assume that when a lion growls and bares his teeth, is laughing. Yes. No. That human
step a little closer and see.
If your earnest wishes to be an ancestor, then approach it.
Yes. So, JIMI.
Yes.
Issue of public debt.
Yes.
And in fact, yesterday we had Bernard Mushere, who used to work at the National Treasury.
Yes.
He was an internal auditor. And he was also telling us about, things that he has been looking at, in our public debt, in our debt book. And he left us here baffled with, and we were like, okay, so Bernard, all right. It's your turn. Baffle us. The public debt.
Yes.
On Sunday, we asked the president the tune of our public debt so far. And he said, our books are showing something to the tune of 8.9 or so trillion shillings, close to 9 trillion shillings. And he says, this is a big thing. I asked him, are you going to publish the debt register? He said, why not? publish the debt register. The issue, though, is if we are to publish the debt register and all of us have access to all the details of this is the amount of money borrowed from whom, used in this particular manner, what are we likely to find?
Start with meant for this purpose.
Yes.
Used in this way, so that we understand.
Yes.
Because when it's borrowed, it's for a purpose.
For what purpose was it borrowed? Was it acquired? At what rate was it acquired? What's the tenure? What are the details? And then was it actually utilized? Now we start auditing, following the shilling, whether it was supposed to go into dam A or into road B or into rail C. Did it end up there? What are we likely to find, Jimmy?
Eric, thank you. It's good to be back here, as I said. Now, I listened to your question very intently. And I pray that you get the debt register quickly, because I didn't hear commitment on timing. The faster we get, what are our rights, because it is a public debt register. In other words, it should be accessible to us. It is not a secret document. Now, when I was last here, I was very clear about the audit, forensic audit that we did with Muchero. I'm glad he came in yesterday. And we were very clear about where the debt of the country is anchored in the budget and in what is called the Appropriations Bill Development. And there, it is very clear the amount of debt that is taken and what its purpose is. There's a whole schedule of public debt. It says, as I said last time, Kitui Water Project, Kenya government is going to contribute so much in taxation. Then we have got debt we are taking from, let us say, Bank of India or India government or Exim Bank, India, the amount to be taken. So it is there. It is published in the Appropriations Bill. And I also said that what you see in the Appropriations Bill that has been passed over the last 9 years has been a total of approved debt of 2 trillion shillings. To remind Kenyans. Now, what you see then, and I think that's what you are asking, in the central bank account, I don't know, maybe, Eric, is that what you meant by public debt register? Because in the central bank account, at the time we did the audit, it was showing that we owe 8.4 trillion, March last year. So we cumulatively said, if you take the carryover debt in the appropriations that was done by, or in the accounts, let me say in CBK, of the regime of Mwai Kibaki, there was 2.3. Now here there is 2, that's 4.3. We said there's a big shortfall of about 4.6 we cannot find. But to cap it was that the same appropriations bills in Parliament says there's one development, there's one recurrent. Recurrent tells us of our payments. Our payments were totaling in the same period of 9 years, 5.6 trillion. And we said we couldn't find that. So I don't know what you were asking for when you asked for the public debt register. Was it the accounts in the central bank? Was it the appropriations? Was it maybe a separate account in the treasury? Because as you learned from Muchero yesterday, we hear there's other debts there that are not legal. So which one were you asking for when you asked?
The National Treasury is required to report to Parliament the status of debts. And it has not been doing that as regularly as it ought to. Parliament has actually been pushing for this, and at some point in, I think the last time was in 2020 or 2021, the National Treasury then published this on their website and said this is the state of our debt, but a lot of information was redacted.
Yes.
And it was not up to date. And that has been the push again from Parliament. Can we get clarity into the National Treasury, what the National Treasury is handling as our debt? Because they're the ones who are paying back debts. and they're the ones who also sign those debts. So what are you dealing with? That was the question.
So where is the National Treasury getting this information? Because to me, this is the, we like people using big words, the data, this. Listen, where are they getting this information? Let's go back to the law.
Yes.
The law is clear where this information is anchored.
Mm-hmm.
So where else do we want this information?
And where is this information anchored?
Yes. It is anchored, as I said. The law is clear, the Constitution and the PFM law says categorically, the budget is where debt is anchored.
Mm-hmm.
And the debt is anchored in what is called the Appropriations Bill Development. There are two bills that go to Parliament during budget. You're going to see it in the next budget that's coming. There are two bills. Appropriations Development Bill and Appropriations Recurrent Bill.
Yes.
Those are the two bills. Now, debt, as I expressed last time, it is categoric. You cannot take debt unless it is for development. So it is anchored in Appropriations Bill Development.
Yes.
And it says all the debt that is approved by Parliament to be taken. Because you cannot take debt without the approval of Parliament.
Yes.
This is what I wonder, what is Parliament asking for? Because Parliament already has got the information
After all, they're the ones who
in their
approved
books. They're the ones who approved it.
They have
And that
approved-
is the law.
They have approved for the National Treasury to borrow X amount.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the National Treasury then goes and sources various sources for that X amount. The other issue that has also been a big one in Parliament is, should the National Treasury be coming, before you sign any loan, should you come and, first of all, inform Parliament that, for example, like you gave an example, Exim Bank of India, we have reached out to Exim Bank of India and we are about to sign a facility of X amount of money. Inform Parliament before signing.
They have
or do you
informed Parliament.
after signing.
Eric,
after signing?
in the Appropriations Bill Development, they have already informed Parliament. There is a line item, a schedule, as I said.
Yes.
Exim Bank India, we are borrowing them from them so much
X
amount of money. And they ask parliamentary approval. So if they are doing something contrary to that approval, or in addition to that approval, let me say,
Yes.
then they have to come back to Parliament. If not, Parliament has already approved.
How would it present when we're looking at these numbers? Because then it could be confusing, How would it present if something was done outside of the lines for which it was originally created? If something was being done, that money having been borrowed, which is supposed to be for the sole purpose of development, or in some other cases, cash flow management, right? If that is done, how would we know? What would we see? What do you see that then says, okay, then Jimmy's looking at this and says, I smell a rat. What would be the aroma that comes from here that we would say something is not right here?
Right. Two things. How they regularize that is by coming back with what you call the supplementary budget.
Yes.
And in supplementary budgets, you address any excess of borrowing that you have done and any domestic you may have done for cash flow. Now, the supplementary budget is also very clear on the maximum limit. You cannot borrow, it cannot be in excess of 15% of your budget. It's very clear, right? And you're regularizing what already exists as approvals. It is not something new. You can't come in with new things. A new line item, for example. You cannot. It is just regularizing. You can say you had done an estimate of a cost of that Kitui water project.
Yes.
It has gone up a little bit by 10%. Now you have come to regularize extra borrowing. That is it. So it's very controlled.
Right.
Now this is the law. This is one thing I would like everyone to understand. There's no hidden data.
Yeah.
Yeah? It is open for us to see. and calculate. Don't let anyone make you believe there is some hidden room where these things are being done. This is our law. And anything contrary to the law is delinquency. And that is what I was saying last time. Then it is odious debt. If we have not approved it by our laws, then it is odious debt. It is something that we are not responsible for as a taxpayer. Now, I'd like to take this a notch higher. When I was last here, I said when you reach a situation of a particular percentage of your revenue going to debt, as we had reached, then you are getting into a crisis. The crisis is debt default. Debt default. And I said the options of debt default are you either raise taxes, all right, or you default, or as I said, you declare an odious debt, as Mozambique did, and they dealt with it. So let's update what has happened since then, because I think a lot has happened. When I was last here, the finance bill had not been published. What happened to the finance bill? We are still debating it. 2 weeks on.
Yep.
Why? Why, Eric?
Because it's going through public participation.
That's a good one. Now, I think my assessment is that taxes have gone up. But I had you ask the president that question. And he said, yes, we have got to raise taxes in line with our GDP and in line with, because some analysis somewhere, that we are the lowest rated tax in the region in relation to GDP. And then at the same time, I also heard him say that, by the way, I have reduced taxes on about 15 items. So did he raise taxes? Are taxes up in the finance bill or are they down? I don't understand. Did they come down with the 15 taxes or have they gone up with the GDP? Eric, maybe because, I didn't see you ask a follow-up question to that.
It's gone up with the GDP, and that's why you're saying he's trying to take it up to about 16%.
So he has raised taxes.
But he has what he explained was what he's done is in some areas which are touching on the hustler, he has seen how to rationalize them. So, for example, if you talk about the removal of the taxes and duties on LPG, right? He says, so we want to make LPG more accessible. If we raise the 8% tax on fuel to 16% on petrol and diesel and kerosene, we are also removing some taxes, some of those levies on the needs, so that we are basically trying to make it painful but then less painful. That's what he meant.
Yeah, but what is the summary? You see, that's like nitpicking.
The summary,
is the summary up or down?
The debt is going up. I mean, the
taxes have gone up.
Taxes going
right.
up.
That tells you
our
that's
tax to
that's
GDP
a red
ratio
signal.
is going up.
I want you to see the red lights. Because it's important to understand the red lights. So tax has gone up. Red light. Red light. The next thing I want you to see, and our CT, you're a good mathematician, so I'm going to share some math with you here, is the April statistics of revenue.
Yeah.
Okay? April stat of revenue. How much taxation the government says it has collected and published this financial year, as of the end of April. All right. The next thing that has changed since we last met is something called Moody's Credit Rating Report. I think that's an important one, because Moody's is the credit, there are two, Moody's and Finch mainly, that tell you the status of a country's credit worthiness, credit rating. And Moody's published 2 reports in the month of May. I mean, in my recent history, I don't remember that on Kenya, that within 2 weeks, you have had 2 reports. Okay? Right. The next, which is important to this question, is our dollar. I remember at one time, maybe a month ago or so, just before I came to studio, there was this big question about our dollar coming down because now there'll be no demand on the fuel dollars that are required every month.
Yeah.
So I think it's an important start because, as I stated last time, every time we lose a shilling, we increase our debt by 40 billion shillings. It's an important parameter. The next are bonds and bills. What is happening to interest rates? What's happening to the government's capacity to raise that domestic money they've put in the budget, so-called, to finance development. To finance
Development.
higher. And the last one, because these are all red lights, is something called the stock market. That is where we buy mostly stocks. One of our blue chip companies has, of recent past, I'm saying since I was here, had a dramatic share drop. Okay? And if you read all indications, that share drop is because of massive sales by foreign investors. Not local. We believe in our companies. Kenyans believe in our companies. So, massive sale of foreign investors, which tells you the way the world is viewing us. Important, red light. So, let's start with the first one. We've done the finance bill.
Let's take a break.
Taxes have gone up.
Let's take a break. We'll come and look back at those red lights. So, finance bill, red light, you said.
Yes.
Revenues, red light, you said. Moody's ratings, red light, you said. Forex and the exchange rate, red light, you said.
Yes.
You said looking at our local stock market, red light.
Yes.
Those are 5.
Yes. And
Was there a
six,
sixth one?
I think you've not done. Have you done bonds and bills?
Bonds and bills was the 6th one.
Yes.
Red lights. Okay. Start with the first one. The finance bill. We are having a national conversation about the finance bill now. The National Assembly Committee on Finance is now receiving all petitions. By yesterday, they had told us they had received more than 1,500 submissions, and they'll start having public hearings from Monday or Tuesday next week.
Now, I think you had a very good guest here last week, Kero Bilo, Biro Kero. And I think he articulated what happens to the finance bill when it gets to Parliament. So it goes into committee and goes to the House. And that generally it's an omnibus bill. I think he was quite assertive about that.
Yes.
Which means really to even change a comma is a very difficult thing. So I want to go generally on the assumption, because I think, look at intent. The intent of the government is to tax us out of this problem. And the problem, keep your eye on the ball, is debt. There's nothing else. It is nothing else. The problem and the target is debt. How to deal with this ballooning debt.
Yeah.
So they have decided they are going to use the option of taxing us out of this problem. So whatever is to come out of finance bill, I think the principle will not change. That taxes will rise for each and every one of us, even as you are saying, the so-called hustler. Right? Because the minute you raise fuel, it touches that hustler more than anything else.
It touches everybody.
Everybody. Right? Now, I've also seen an assertion, interestingly, about how fuel prices, this. Let me tell you, you imagine that even as we are talking today, fuel in Uganda is cheaper than it is in Kenya. And that fuel, their fuel passes our whole territory to get to Uganda. It's now at 174. I think we're at 184. With the proposed changes, they say we're heading towards 200.
And 5.
And 5. Now, really, okay? It's cheaper to buy fuel or any goods in Uganda, because goods, the price of fuel is an input cost.
Yeah.
An input means cost of your production.
Yeah.
So for any manufacturer, it's easier to go across. Look at electricity. Look at everything. It's cheaper there. Now, before we get there, I think the principle is the finance bill is going to increase our taxes. So they're taxing us out of our debt problem. 2, I think on your list it's what? Moody's? Moody's.
It was revenue.
Revenue.
But you can go to...
So we went to revenue.
Yes.
Now, I have given CT, he's good with numbers. CT, you're very good with the numbers. I hope you have a pen and a calculator. I want to make this, you see, everyone makes these figures like they are very complicated. They are very simple.
Ndu has the calculator.
Yes.
He has a
Siti has the
calculator.
paper.
I have the maths.
And
She
you
has
have
the
a piece
calculator.
of
I have
paper.
the pen.
You have a pen and a piece of paper.
yes.
Good. I want the pen and the piece of paper.
Jim is determined that I must go back to class.
Oh, yes. Now, this is what I presented are 2 things. One is the statement of actual revenues and net exchequer issues as of 28th of April 2023. This is now the statement of account up until April 2023 of this year. And the second one are our debt obligations of the financial year. So, CT, let's go to the first one. It says tax revenue. Second item. All right? It says revised tax estimate. Don't worry about original. Revised tax estimate. What does it read?
2.108 trillion.
Right. That is what the government,
Revised estimate.
yes. That is what the government needs to collect. All right?
By the end of June.
By the end of June.
Okay.
This is now end of April. And how much have they collected?
Actual receipts as of the 28th of April is 1.573 trillion.
Right.
Yes.
Now, I want you to take a very good calculator. Because this is very simple math. Because we are trying to get to a particular target. Very simple math. When you say 2.108 trillion, I would like you to divide that by 12 and tell me what you need to come to every month. And I'll make it easy for you. This is thousands there you see in the front. So you just take 2108, divide by 12, you get the figure that is monthly.
175.6.
Now nasitu umeshindwa na hesabu. 175 billion.
0.6.
She's the calculator.
Well,
one.
it's called a tag team.
Division of labor.
Yeah, we get it.
Division of labor.
Yes.
Everyone with their speciality.
175.6 is the monthly target
Is the monthly target for collection.
for collection.
All right?
All right.
Now, I want you to take 1573 and divide by 10 months.
157.3.
That is how much we have been collecting so far. All right?
So there's been a shortfall.
There's
So
been a shortfall.
175 minus 157,
That's 20.
18 deficit, shortfall.
18 deficit?
So what we should be collecting to meet the target is 175.6. What has been collected is 157.3. The shortfall is 18.
Good. Now, let me simplify
That's
it further.
billion, huh?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it's not 18 shillings.
157 billion is what they're collecting.
Yes.
So multiply one, because these last 2 months, I can assure you, as you can feel the economy, it's not going to be any big boom. So let's take it, they'll collect 157 the next 2 months. So that's May and June. Right? That brings us to a total figure of what? 157 times 12.
314. Oh, times 12?
Yes.
Okay, so 157 times 12 will give us 1.8 trillion.
1.8 trillion.
Yes.
Right. Now, CT, look on your second page.
Right.
Remember that figure of 1.8 trillion.
1.88
We're coming back to the
trillion,
math.
yes.
Is what you're estimating they will be able to raise
Correct.
by the end of June.
Correct.
All right.
Now, you come to, I think you can see some circles. The revised estimates 2022, 2023. This is now the debt register, debt accounts. What does it say annual payments this year, public debt at the bottom?
1.360 trillion.
So we estimate about 1.4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, we are losing on exchange every month.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or every week, actually.
Mm-hmm. Every day, actually.
Yeah. So now, remember your figure?
Yeah.
1.8?
Yes.
All right. Now, just to make this simple for those at home, right? What is 10% of 2.1 trillion? Remember, 2.1
It's 210
Billion.
billion.
Yes.
Yes.
210.
10 billion.
That's
Right.
10%. That maths I can do off head.
Good. So 210 minus 2.1 trillion takes you to what?
So 2.1 trillion minus 210 billion. 1.9.
Yes.
1.9.
1.88 actually on the money.
Okay. You've minus 10%. So it means that 90% of our revenue is going to debt. Have I lost you?
No.
Why did you do the 10%?
Because you just subtract. Because we are now getting into percentages.
Okay.
We're trying to see how much of our debt,
Our annual
our
debt,
revenue is going
our
to
annual
debt.
debt repayment is 1.4 trillion this year.
Yes.
You are estimating that, going by the fact that we had only collected 1.57 trillion by the end of last month, we are likely going to collect 1.8 trillion by the end of next month,
Yes.
right? By the end of June.
Yes.
So if we collect that 1.8 trillion, we pay 1.4 trillion, we only left with for like a 400 billion shillings ya kucheza nayo sasa hapo kulipa mshahara.
Now, I want you to understand it in percentage terms to debt. So, Eric, where are you going? Let me revise what I said.
Okay.
So, if 1.8 is the revenue we are collecting,
Yes.
and we had a target of 2.1,
Yes.
of 2.1?
One.
So 1.4 is what percentage of 1.8 trillion?
Okay. So it's 1.4 or 1.8
Times 100.
times 100.
77%.
77%.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are at 77%. I think when I was last here, I said that we would be about 80% of our revenue
Going to debt. Yes.
Now, with that,
77 is close to 80.
it's close to it. I think you can see we were on the money. We were on the money. Now, I said Ghana, when it reached 70% in December, they defaulted. We are at 77% as we are talking today. I want you to also look at something called the shilling. Ever since, let's even give it a period of a year since now. The shilling was at 120 a year ago. 120. As of latest figures yesterday, it is 138. I said we are losing 35 to 40 billion shillings every time the shilling drops. So, do again, you're very good with your calculations.
138 minus 120
18.
Yes.
I don't even.
times.
Let's take the minimum, 35.
630.
That is the increase of debt to date, billion.
Good golly.
Okay?
All right.
Okay.
And it's very clear the shilling is not losing its slide. It is a shilling a week. A week. So you can estimate what it's going to be at the end of June. They are unable to stem the slide of the shilling. Are you getting frightened enough?
Not really, just intrigued. Because it leads, you see, you've landed at a spot where, well, I didn't know you were going to get there, but you've gotten there. And the question that I was asking in my mind, and which I want to now express loudly, is if everything remained constant, let's say the shilling wasn't doing this downward slide, and it remained constant, and the taxes that have been proposed and which are going to land on our heads also realized what it was that they're supposed to realize, would we, in all honesty, ever be able to actually manage the country? Manage meaning pay our debts and then also meet our obligations?
No.
Yes.
No, not as we are.
Yes.
Not as we are. And that's what I was trying to articulate last time I was here. That we entered a debt trap. When Honorable Mwai Kibaki, His Excellency Mwai Kibaki left power, of every 100 shillings of our revenue, 18 shillings was going to debt. 18. And in fact, this thing, let's simplify. Don't put debt to GDP. Talk about how much of our revenue
is going to debt.
Is going to debt. Just like we manage our homes.
Yes.
Okay, it's a simple thing. When anybody takes you GDP, they are trying to send you into the stars. Now, when Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta left, I think you've seen the figures. 65, I think, was the figure. We are now heading towards 80. They normally say that if you have reached a point where 30%, in other words, 30 shillings of every 100 is going to debt, you enter what is called a debt trap. You need more and more debt to keep meeting your obligations.
And there's no end.
And there's no end in sight. None. The end in sight is if for some good reason we've struck some great product, like suddenly we have got oil.
We do have oil.
Well, we are not exploiting it right now, are we?
No, we're not.
And I think it's even, let's be sincere about oil. I think it's not going to be as popular in the future as it used to be.
No, popularity is going down.
Yes. So we have to look at our productive side and say, what do we have that is dramatically going to change our accounts?
Yep.
Or you go through the options which we are going through. We are no different to any other country in the world. Right? Because, somehow I tend to think Kenyans think we are more special. We think we are more special in some way or another in terms of this. We are going to be saved by people or something of that sort. They owe us an obligation. It amazes me. I hear everyone saying, no, but IMF will come to our aid. Those are people's taxes in IMF. Why should they come to a Kenya's aid when we are the ones who have messed up our own accounts? Right? So, this was a matter of time. It's called kicking the can down the road. And we kicked it down the road until it has reached where it has reached. This is the end.
Jimmy, even as we look at these numbers, I mean, the last time you came in, also looking at the publication that you put out and then talking about this again today, the question is, then what? I mean, we've come and then we've thrown this thing, it's exploding all over the place, and then you say, then what? If somebody who is on the outside, as it were, is able to see this by a simple audit of some of these numbers, taking the time to actually go in and do that, the question is, then what?
I'm coming to that. This is why I want us to keep at this, because we must accept it first as Kenyans. We must accept it. So let's go on to the next thing. Sorry, Citi, you want to ask something?
Okay. No, not really. This question can wait because it's not one.
So we've dealt with how many? We've dealt with three.
We've dealt with April. We've dealt with finance bill.
We've dealt with revenues.
We've done with revenues
and exchange.
And we've done exchange.
Yes.
Now let's go to Moody's report.
Okay.
Now Moody's came out with a very interesting report on the 1st of May. They said Kenya's credit rating, is B2.
But it's been downgraded to B3.
From B1. But I want you to understand this so clearly, Citi. I want you to take it pole pole. I want you to read the scale for those who...
Okay.
Moody's rating scale.
Yes, just so that you understand where we are at. So when you hear B, C, God, D, you understand.
Where does it begin? Does it begin from the
There's
top or from the
triple
bottom?
A, lowest level of credit risk, meaning, and it's in blue, meaning you can be lent money.
Okay.
Then there's AA1, AA2, AA3, very low credit risk.
Okay.
Then there's A1, A2, and A3, low credit risk. Remember, we lowest, very low, now low. Then now we enter the waters that we may be familiar with. BAA1, BAA2, BAA3, that's moderate credit risk. I think moderate. As we like saying katikati. Then there is the next level, substantial credit risk, the English language. Now, BA1, BA2, BA3. Then now, these are waters that we understand full well. It is in bright orange. High credit risk, B1, B2, B3.
High credit risk.
High.
Orange color.
Orange. There's red. We haven't gone to red yet. Okay. Now, red is the one that you should pay attention to, because red is CAA1, CAA2, CAA3. Now, this one is very high credit risk. Believe it or not, we are there.
There we go.
We're at B2.
We're at B3.
We're at B3.
Yes, which means we are just one step away from
the
being
C.
very,
You know, when you go to traffic lights,
Yeah.
there is amber, there's green, there's amber, green, amber, and red.
Yes.
Right? Now we are at amber.
Get ready to stop.
And counting down.
And the lowest,
Three,
and the
two,
lowest,
one.
the lowest seconds of amber. B3. Now we started at the beginning of this month at B2, and within just 2 weeks we went to B3.
Good grief.
Right.
And as CT has put into the next is
C.
AA1 categorization. Now, you know, that
Right.
one now is like you're already bad. Now you're bad grade 1, you're bad grade 2, you're horrible grade 3. And
Jimmy, where were we a year ago?
we were B1.
So we've been in B1 until 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
When now we've gone to B2.
Yes.
We're heading south towards the C category.
Yes. And
the C
very
category
fast.
is the
Take note,
red.
very fast. So what is it Moody is seeing that we are all not seeing? Or we are refusing to see? Because it's good to live in the real world.
What do they look at?
They look at our numbers, just like we are looking at them. There's nothing different that they look at. They look at our numbers, just as we are going down this list. Okay? Are we together? Good. What was the next one?
The next one
Before we move
is
from
Yes,
our
yes,
bills,
yes,
our
it-
bills and bonds, and our stock exchange, and we look at those once we do the news.
So.
Let's do the news.
look at that. Sawa.
Yeah. So facts as they are, from figures published by the Central Bank and the National Treasury, we have so far, by the end of April, we had collected 1.573 trillion shillings. The revised target for revenues toward the end of this year is 2.108 trillion shillings. We are far from that.
But Jimmy has to answer
About
my question when we
535
come
billion
back.
shillings. When we come back, we now look again at more.